correct me.
You just walked in the door, so.
Oh, okay.
And it might come as a shock to you, but here's my intro. Chat about things. Chat about things. Mention the exhibit. Look what's there.
Okay.
In living color.
In living color. You got the
You can
color
use that
version.
for a crib note in case you want to.
I just need to remember it. A few seconds.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2017 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGilvery Speedway at 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. And if you're coming to town for this weekend's Red Bull Air Race, be sure and make a stop at McGilvery's. It's only about 2.5 miles west of the Speedway. They got great food, great service, and the adult beverages are ice cold. Tonight's show is presented by Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the Verizon IndyCar Series. For those of you who might not have heard, the 1975 Rookie of the Year for the Indianapolis 500, Bill Puterbaugh, passed away on Monday. He was 81. He made 5 additional attempts to qualify for the race from 1970 to 1974 and missed them. But in 75, through the help of Big Al and Lloyd Ruby, he made it. They told him how to get around the track and how to make it work, and he made it. He started 15th and he finished 8th. And the next best event return or finish he had was in 76 when he finished 12th. Bill was a great guy, a lot of fun to be around, and a very popular driver in his day. And it was a good guy even after his day, actually. How many people like to go to the Christmas and Hobby Show? Christmas Gift and Hobby Show. The all-new Christmas Gift and Hobby Show is a place where thousands of people come together to experience a unique shopping event with a one-of-a-kind finds. The show features more than 350 exhibitors along with a holiday entertainment stage, sure to put you in the holiday mood. Plus, get a chance to meet Santa. The Christmas Gift and Hobby Show is scheduled for November 8th to the November the 12th at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. And luckily, we're going to have some tickets to give away. So keep that in mind, November 8th to the 12th, the Christmas Gift and Hobby Show at the Indianapolis State Fairgrounds, or the Indiana State Fairgrounds, actually. I want to remind you, the end of the month is rapidly approaching, or near the end of the month, and the A.J. Foyt exhibit is about to end. We will be talking with somebody from the Speedway Museum about what's upcoming. So we'll tell you that shortly in the next couple of weeks. But if you haven't been there, you need to get there. If you don't have a brochure, we got a few left up here. Help yourself and see what you're going to see. And also, we want to remind you of the upcoming annual fundraiser for IRMA, the Indiana Racing Memorial Association. It takes place on Thursday the 19th from 5:30 to 8. So it means they got food you got to eat in a hurry. And it's at the Sexton Cars of Yesteryear Museum, located at 131 West 22nd Street. It's between Capitol and Illinois Street. Price of admission is $45, which does include food and beverages, and some fabulous cars. You're going to see some cars you're not going to believe. This is quite a museum and quite a number of interesting cars. Also want to make mention of something. You've heard Jack Miller here a couple of times, and for those of you who don't know, he's a dentist, and he's got a business called the Indy Dental Group. Now, people's number one doctor's appointment usually is, oh God, a dentist. I'm here to tell you, they have a fabulous practice. The people are super. The dentists that they have working there are super. They treat you nice. They treat you right. If you got a problem, a dental problem, I highly recommend it. Give them a call. Make a reservation, or an appointment, actually. It's 317-846-6125. The Indy Dental Group, Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis. They have a fabulous practice. I'm telling you. Now, my first guest is a gentleman who has spent more than 20 minutes as a journalist writing on motorsports. He has several books to his credit, one of which is an award-winning book on Vukovich, and I believe the latest one that's out, has been out, is the life and times of Troy Ruttman. They looked into his entire life, and quite an interesting character. And he is on the board for the IRMA organization, and we'll talk about, as we did last week, some of the things going, but I'm interested in his stories and researching the stories. And since he's been writing, I don't know, I hope he can talk. Please welcome Mr. Bob Gates. What got you into writing on motorsports?
Well, I grew up around Indianapolis, so normally if you grow up around Indianapolis, it's basketball or auto racing or both. And I just leaned towards auto racing.
Did you ever drive?
Go-karts. When I was in England, believe it or not.
I believe it.
While I was in the service, I lived in a town called Ipswich, and they had their own oval track there, an oval track. And they raced what we would call jalopies now. And so me and another guy, we messed around with that, raced jalopies in the wrong direction on an oval track in England.
So you decided, rather than do it, I'll write about it.
Yeah, a lot easier.
Oh. Now, you wrote a book on Vukovich, which has gotten a number of awards. And the reason I mention that is one of the plaques that's going to be placed. You're now expanding out of Indiana, which was your original plan was to be Indiana. But you're starting to draw a lot of attention, and you're going to do one, not exactly sure when, for Bill Vukovich out in Fresno, California. How long did it take you to research him and write a book? I mean, who else did you talk to besides Bill Jr.?
Well, I really researched the book over a period of years because I was interested in the character, Bill Vukovich, myself. He was a hero when I was a kid. Didn't know anything about him. He was a very mysterious individual, and I think remained so until I did the book. Hopefully I exposed him a little bit. But I was able to talk to most of his family, his brothers, his sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, on a couple of trips to Fresno, as well as Bill Jr., Bill's sister Esther, and some other individuals, close friends, that type of thing.
Were there any of the drivers that he raced against still around that you got to talk to and find out, was he a nice guy in the track, or is it get out of my way, here I come?
A little bit of both. Johnny Boyd, I think probably is the one most everyone here would know, and great individual himself, great guy, Johnny Boyd. And he told me a story once about the year he came back here, 1955. And they had a race, midget race there at the stadium in Fresno. And he got up, Johnny worked up his way up towards the front, got behind Bill Vukovich Sr. And Johnny told me, he said, I don't know why I did it. I couldn't get around him, so I bumped him. And he said, as soon as I bumped him, I knew I was in trouble. And he said he beat and banged on me all night. And, of course, Vuki went on to take the win. And I think Johnny did finish second. But the next morning, Johnny said, I want to go over and see Vuk and make sure everything's all right between him and I, because I'm going back to Indy this year, and I'd like to have his help. So he goes over, sits down, has coffee with Vuki. Vuki didn't mention it at all. Not a mention about it. Told him when he got back to Indianapolis just to be careful. Said that's a dangerous place. Of course, 55 was the year Vukovich got killed there. Interesting side story, and this is hard to believe, maybe about Johnny Boyd, but especially I think about Bill Vukovich. Vuki told him while they were having coffee, he said, my wife Esther loves to dance. And he said, I can't dance. And Boyd said, I'm the same way. He said, Vuk, when we get back from Indy, why don't we take dancing lessons? And Bill Vukovich agreed to take dancing lessons with Johnny Boyd. Of course, that never came to fruition. But that's just one of those interesting things about Vukovich. You think about him, the mad Russian and the guy that's rough, tough, and mean all the time, but he had that soft side to him.
And prior to getting to Indianapolis, he was a pretty good short track driver.
Oh, yeah, excellent midget driver. I told Bill Jr., in my opinion, I don't think he would have ever went to Indianapolis if midget racing hadn't started taking a downturn. Yeah, he could race around home 5, 6, 7 nights a week there in California. I think one year he made $40,000. Now, this is in the 1940s, just racing midgets. And he really he didn't have much of a desire to run what they called then the big cars. But midget racing started taking a downturn, and Vuki's thought was, well, if Johnny Parsons can do it, and if Freddie Agabation can do it, and these guys I beat regularly on the midget tracks, he said I should be able to run out there with no problem, and he did.
Hey, the rumor is he did fairly well.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
What did you ever determine what got him started? I mean, was there somebody, his dad or anybody that raced, or did he just start because he thought it would be fun?
He grew up following racing, just like a lot of us did. It's just something that he was fascinated with very, very early on, maybe when he was 6 or 7 years old. The board track was still running there in Fresno. So he went with his older brothers to the board track races. Now, they couldn't afford to get in, but so they watched what they could through the knotholes in the fence and that type of thing. But he was just enamored with racing and those race car drivers, even from that age. And I think he saw it as he was dirt poor. He saw it as a way to get out of poverty, to make something out of himself.
I wonder if he ever had the opportunity to run midgets with Cowboy O'Rourke. You know Cowboy?
Yeah, he was very big back here, especially in the Chicago area, in the Midwest.
Oh, yeah.
Not sure. He probably did. Maybe when Vuk won the Midget Racing Championship in 1950, AAA Midget Championship in 1950, ran in the Midwest. He probably ran with him then. Most of Vuki's activities were on the West Coast,
right.
California and up and down the coast.
Is the Troy Ruttman story, California Gold, is that your latest?
Yes, that's my latest book. It's been out a couple of years now.
But are you working on another one?
Yes and no. I can probably mention this at this point.
Okay, go ahead.
This is an exclusive. I know you'll get all excited. John Pappas, I don't know if any of you know John, and the group that's rebuilding the Boyle Garage.
Oh, yeah.
Over on 16th Street, if you're familiar with that. They want to do a reprint of Wilbur Shaw's book, Gentlemen, Start Your Engines. And so I've done some research into that with a couple of publishers to do the reprint. And they want to add to that book with some stuff with Wilbur Shaw Jr., Bill Shaw, that some of you know very well. And so I just got started working on that. Hopefully, the hope is to have it out by the month of May next year, 2018.
When is the garage going to be done? I know they've been tinkering around with that for a while.
You run into environmental problems when you start those rebuilds. That's been the holdup.
I see. Again, who all did you get to talk to in Troy's family? I mean, I know his daughter. She was just here a month or so ago. But who all did you get to speak to get the inside skinny on him? Because he had a very strange life. It was up and down, I would say, would somewhat cover it.
Right. Yeah, Troy, of course, Toddy Ruttman, and spent a lot of time with her, going through scrapbooks, that type of thing. Also, several of the drivers, Parnelli Jones, spent some time with Parnelli. It's interesting that for Parnelli Jones and Dan Gurney, Troy Ruttman was their hero before they started racing. And in reality, they were about the same age because Troy started so young. But I talked to Parnelli, Dan Gurney. Dan Gurney had some wonderful stories about Troy Ruttman. Bobby Unser. My gosh, you've had Bobby. So, he can go on and on.
He's got stories on everybody.
I called Bobby one Saturday morning and got him. And I thought, I just wanted to ask him a few concentrated questions about Troy Ruttman. And I figured, okay, this is Bobby Unser. I'm going to give him 45 minutes. 2 hours later, I was still on the phone with him. And we covered everything that you'd want to know about happening in racing at that time. And in fact, when I talked to Bobby, it was several months after Dan Weldon died at Las Vegas. So Bobby had his own opinions about that and about the race, as you can imagine.
Bobby have an opinion? Oh,
Bobby was very eloquent about, Troy Ruttman was an alcoholic, and he started drinking probably at the age of 13 or 14. Never drank during a immediately before a race or anything like that, but he fought alcoholism all his life. So Bobby had a lot of insights with Al Jr. Experience and how it related to Troy Ruttman. So that was interesting.
and I'm sure when you got done talking to Bobby, you were convinced he never took a drink.
No. Well, for one thing, he wouldn't buy a drink. So
That's for sure.
maybe somebody bought him one, but I'm sure he didn't buy his own.
Now, I've talked to his daughter on a couple of occasions, and she gets into talking about it, and she gets very emotional. Tears start coming down. So I said, obviously, his life was not, he's a 500 champion, the youngest one. Oh, no, that was that was hardly his life. That he had a lot of downtime, a lot of, just bad.
Yeah, he had a lot of ups, had a lot of downs. Like I said, he was an alcoholic. Went through 2 or 3 fortunes. At one time, he was the biggest Yamaha dealer in the United States.
Really?
So, I mean, that's the kind of person he was. He would get knocked down, it seemed, and then he would pop back up, eventually come back, make another fortune, lose it, come back, do it again. He raced in Europe. And this is where him and Dan Gurney spent a lot of time together. I think it was 57, 58. So I actually talked to Sterling Moss about Troy, Sir Sterling Moss. Sterling didn't have a lot of memories necessarily about Troy, but it was pretty neat that I got to talk to him. And that's how diverse Troy Ruttman was.
Now, you are a board member of IRMA.
Yes.
Along with you have a very esteemed colleague by the name of Dick Jordan, who I saw come in here. I don't know where he went. Probably hiding under a table somewhere.
Yeah, he's out there somewhere.
He's hiding someplace. How early on did you get involved in this organization?
From the very beginning. It was formed, as you know, by Mark Usler and Brian Hassler.
In Brian's living room, I might add.
Yes, in Brian's living room. So within weeks of that, I was asked to be a board member. Myself, Gary Lee, Dave Bozell, several others.
I know Gary was gung-ho. I was at Mark Jane's daughter's wedding, and he grabbed me and he said, "You got opening next week or the week after?" I said, "Yeah, why?" "There's this new organization. I want to come and talk about it." He was all fired up. Well, unfortunately, he passed away before that happened. Right. But he was really gung-ho on it, and it's a shame. I think he would have been a real huge asset to the organization. I mean, not that there's anybody on there that's not, but he was a recognizable guy. Whether you wanted to recognize him or not, you recognized him anyway.
Such an outgoing personality.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, he fills the room up.
When you started this, I'll say you as the group, as I said, it was originally designed for Indiana. You were going to, because there's a lot of drivers and so forth that have been buried here, but nobody knows they're here. And you're trying to resolve that problem and are doing so. And it seems from my observation and my conversations with Dr. Mark that people are starting to recognize what you're doing and helping, so you don't have to beat doors down to get funding. They're saying, "Oh, this is a good idea." But did you guys ever anticipate leaving the area that you'd get calls from outside here and say, "Well, hey, here's something we could do"?
Yeah, that's right. It's the organization has just grown immensely, and there's a lot of you in the room that's been to some of our ceremonies or unveiling ceremonies, or at least familiar. Probably catch our Facebook page. I spend a lot of time on our Facebook page, so it's just grown immensely over the last several years, and being well received here in the state of Indiana. We erected I believe it's our 30th marker recently. I'm starting to lose track. But we erected our 30th here recently.
That's the first sign of age.
Yeah, exactly. We have enough markers lined up right now for probably the next 3 years here in the state of Indiana. So,
and according to Mark, that the funding is starting to come in. You don't have to kick doors down like you did initially.
Yeah, that's right. communities are coming together. That's kind of the neat thing about it. I don't know if some of you were at Brian Clausen's ceremony, unveiling ceremony, sometime back, about a year back. But the community there came together to fund the marker, to make a place for the marker in the park. Not only just a place to stand the marker up, but they've landscaped around it, going to add a meditation bench and those types of things. So this is what some of the communities are doing to get involved with these markers that's memorializing the legacy of racing here in Indiana. That is a part of our legacy. So it's become so popular here in Indiana. On our Facebook page, on our website, people read about it, and they've asked about doing markers in other states. So we've actually already formed the American Racing Memorial Association, ARMA, and we've done some work with ARMA, primarily in helping in Louisiana identify the grave of one of the Chevrolet brothers. I won't go into all that because I'm sure Mark did.
Oh, yeah.
But we've been asked to go to several different states, so what we're looking at doing first is in California with Bill Vukovich, or really this will be for the entire Vukovich family, Bill Sr., Bill Jr., Billy the Third. The mayor of Fresno has already approved it. We're just working through all the red tape to get something like that done in a fairly large city. And we're looking at the spring of the year to have that first of the ARMA markers for the Vukovich family.
You and Dick were at a meeting today in Arlington. How did that go? You got that program put together, and who's that to honor?
The marker in Arlington, which will be April 23rd, 2018. We got a date set for that, and that's to honor the crash victims of the USAC plane crash back in 1978. I didn't know this, and I was talking to a few people out here. After that crash, it was a pretty horrific crash, and most of them are buried in a mass grave there in Arlington with no marker on it at all. So what the Indiana Racing Memorial Association is going to do is we're going to erect one of our markers near the entrance to the cemetery, and then we also will have a granite marker at the mass grave site itself to remember those people. It's funded. I can just say, did you spot Dick Jordan? I don't know if I can say this or not, who funded it. Just say a well-known racing driver from Indiana funded this entire thing. We'll just leave it at that.
You should have prefaced by saying a very successful.
Okay, very successful. Well-known race car driver.
Well, I didn't hear. Oh, it wasn't you. Was it you? Oh, how did he put the money up? Cheapskate? You ever heard him walk? Every step he takes, he squeaks.
So that just shows how well known this is getting to be, and how well received it's getting to be.
And I understand also that you guys have been contacted about going across the ocean.
We're looking at going international with this. That'll probably be a little further out yet.
Oh, yeah.
We'll probably need some more major funding for that. I mentioned the Vukoviches in Fresno. We're also looking at the Bettenhausens in Tinley Park. Hopefully
you could
Troy
put
Ruttman in Oklahoma.
You can put a dozen of them in Tinley Park.
Yeah.
Half the residents are Bettenhausens.
And we got a whole slew of them we can do in Texas.
Oh, yeah. Now, this fundraiser that's upcoming next week, it's downtown at a museum that I understand it's very difficult to get in to see. And you're having it there, and they say they've got cars there that'll just astound you.
That's what I understand. I've never been in it. There's no photos from inside the museum. The lady that owns it, actually, it was Joe Sexton. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim Albers. Joe Sexton that started this museum. He was a racer himself. And then he passed away. His wife's continued on with it. But she's kept it very, very private, probably just because she wants to, number one. Number two, she doesn't want to advertise what's in there just for liability purposes and that type of thing. But it's very exclusive. A lot of not only race cars, but other types of automobiles as well. Vintage automobiles, antique automobiles, just fascinating, interesting automobiles. A vast majority of memorabilia and that type of thing.
And are they going to have everybody turn their phone off when they go in? Because I understand
Well,
you cannot take pictures.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. Now, if you're interested in going, Don's graciously mentioned it already. Some questions we have, there is plenty of parking there around back. It's secured parking. There will be a guard there at the parking lot. And then along with the museum itself, we're going to have several of the USAC drivers there. Dave Darlin will be there. Justin Grant, who's leading the sprint car points at the moment. Cody Swanson, who's leading the Silver Crown, probably has that wrapped up. And then the young man that's leading the midget points at the moment,
Spencer Brayton.
Spencer Brayston.
Yeah.
We'll have all of those guys there, all the USAC guys there, then maybe some more as the time approaches.
They're a little early to come to a place where they puts out markers because you've passed away. They're young kids, except for Dave. He's
Yeah, he's getting up there, isn't it? Kind of ironically, you mentioned that, and I hope this doesn't sound morbid, but when we did our fundraiser last year at the Stutz building, Brian Clausen was there. We also did an unveiling for the Stutz Memorial, or for the Stutz building. We did a marker for the Stutz building. Brian was at the unveiling and the fundraiser, and he said to his girlfriend as they were leaving, he said, maybe one day they'll do one of these markers for me. And that was really the impetus behind his girlfriend and his family wanting to push to get a marker for Brian as quickly as we did.
And it was quick.
It was very quick.
Very quick. A tragic loss. I mean, the
Oh,
guy
absolutely.
was phenomenal. What about down in the Clearwater, St. Pete area for Dave Steele? Has his name come up at all?
Yes. Yes, and as you look at auto racing across, just in Indiana, but across the nation, my gosh, this is stretched well beyond our lifetimes, and that's what we hope that we can continue memorializing the history of racing, because we don't want to lose that. As many of us fans age, you get a little bit concerned about a younger generation coming up that's as interested in these things as we were and we are. And so what we're trying to do is perpetuate that history of auto racing.
And you're helping out by writing stories on some of these guys that were, as they say, heroes.
That's right.
I just figured they had more guts than I did. I didn't necessarily make them a hero, but
Absolutely.
And the sad part about racing, but a good part is, out of severe accidents and death have come improvements in the cars. I mean, let's face it, if Todd Brayton was here and his brother lost his life in something today, he'd get out of the car and brush the dust off and walk away. And as a result of probably Dan Weldon a little bit, some others, Sebastian Bourdais walked away from his, limped, but walked away, and 14 weeks later he's back in a car.
It's amazing.
That wouldn't have happened 15, 20 years ago.
No, absolutely not.
So as tragic it is to lose a life, people are awake and say, we should have thought of that, and now they do and fix it.
Right. Well, and every time something like that happens, you learn something, make a slight improvement, and that carries over into all forms of racing. And not like it used to, or at least not dramatically like it used to, but eventually these things carry over into our passenger cars as well.
Oh, yeah. The rear view mirror came from it,
Yeah.
among other things.
Nothing that dramatic today,
Yeah, well.
but still a lot of those improvements with computer guidance and all those types of things.
And it's amazing to me, you've got an engine that ran this year. They had 750, 800 horsepower, and they got all this torque. But by next year, it will be improved. Now, this thing has been, what do you change? It's the little things they do, and it picks up 5 horsepower. And why didn't you think of that in the first place? Well, don't know.
You just learn as you go.
I mean, you got 6 or 8 cylinders, and you keep making them better, and it's the same thing it was. It's just different parts and pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
It amazes me, and I enjoy watching it and seeing what happens. And I'm looking forward to the new car, which is being tested today and tomorrow at Road America, assuming it's not raining, and I didn't look at the weather to see, but I know there's some guys up there, teams up there testing the new cars, so that I think by the time they really get everything going, everybody will have had a shot if they can go to test the cars, which is good. So I think it's going to be some good racing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you, and you will be at the fundraiser on the 19th, right?
Yes.
You'll be there. Okay.
Yes, I'll be there.
Is Dick is he going to drive, or are you going to have to drive yourself?
I'll manage.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time, getting
Thanks
back
for
from
having me.
Arlington and coming up and talk. I find it interesting. I've read your book on Vuki, and I've got a copy of the Troy Ruttman book. Very interesting. I can see a lot of work, but it takes a lot of years of covering racing and know how to deal with these things. And they're both good. If you haven't read them, you got to get them. Are they available at Amazon?
Yes, they're still available.
Well, I'm sure they are until hell
For a
freezes
price.
over. Well, yeah. Do you sell them, or are they on Amazon and
You can
Barnes
get them
and
on
Noble?
Amazon, Coastal 181.
Oh, yeah. Somebody else uses that, and I can't think of it. I don't remember somebody.
Pit Stop Books here in Indy has the Ruttman book in particular.
Where is that?
Zionsville, I believe, is where Rick Witt is located. Toddy Ruttman, if you want to contact her, you can catch her on Facebook. She's selling her dad's book, and she'll autograph it and probably send a photograph as well with that. So if you would like to get that from Troy Ruttman's daughter, you can do that on Facebook.
Well, I thank you. We look forward to getting together again. I'm going to give you a break until the 19th, so you've got 9 days that you don't have to be pestered by me.
All right. Thanks.
Bob, it's always a pleasure to have you here, Mr. Bob Gates. My next guest is on his way up here, but I want to remind you that the Autosport Radio show is sponsored, among others, by Stitches 2 on Gasoline Alley in the Hinchman building. Whatever you need embroidered, you can get it done. Call Fran. She loves to talk. Tell her what you need, and she can take care of it. Her number is 317-271-3444. And let her know what you need, and she can take care of it. Whether you mail it, send it, throw it, drive it, however you get it there, she can take care of it, and they do a spectacular job. Sam Pierce Chevrolet is located in Daleville, Indiana. You got to come to the country to see why the best prices are, in fact, in the country. It's Sam Pierce Chevrolet in Daleville. You'll also see why Sam is rated at the top of customer satisfaction. He doesn't sell you a car and stand behind you. He stands alongside you. Take I-69 north to exit 34, go east 1 mile, and you won't miss them. You want to find out why these guys like driving these Indy cars? You can take a ride in the Indy Racing Experience 2-seater. You can go to Indy Racing Experience, sign up, and in the promo box put SJ1. You get a 50% discount. Or you can call 317-243-7171, extension 106. Talk to Shonda, and again mention SJ1, set up the date you want, and it will happen. Is it time to look for insurance for your home, your car, or if you have a commercial property? Do yourself a favor before you sign next year's contract. Call VP Insurance and get a quote. You'll find out, like a lot of people, and myself included, went, wow, I got a better coverage for less money. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. The number is 317-248-0070. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street in the beautiful town of Speedway. And if you're a vintage car fan, you've got to go and subscribe to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. You just go to svra.com and subscribe to it. It is a first-class magazine. You'll find a lot of cars that you used to love, and I've loved pictures. They're around, they're running, and find out who has them and who's driving them. And while you're at it, if you're a Trans Am fan from days gone by, Tony Perella now has controlling interest in Trans Am, and they'll be performing at a number of the SVRA events, one of which will be here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and you can subscribe to that magazine as well. And the next event for the SVRA is November the 2nd through the 5th at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas. If you're anywhere in the area within driving distance of a day or so, you got to go. It's a great event. Great stuff goes on. You'll love it. My next guest is a young man that I met at the PRI show, I don't know, last year or this year or sometime. And I said, I want to talk to you. And he said, okay. Well, the opportunity popped up today with the fact that the driver was, a pilot was supposed to be here, and that fell apart. I scrambled today and found two guests. One I've been wanting to get, but he's here now. He is a student at Marian University studying business. Now, if you're going into racing, you sure better know business anymore. You can't just walk in and say, "Hi, guess who I am," because they don't care. He has got quite an extensive resume up to date, and you want to go to autosportradio.com and look at it. But in the meantime, we're going to talk to him. Going to be a graduate. When do you graduate from Marian?
The plan is to graduate in May of 2020.
2020? Jeez Louise. Please welcome the son of Jeff. He is now here on his own. Please welcome Chandler Horton. Now, I suppose if I said, what put in your head to drive race cars, that's kind of a dumb question because your dad's been involved in it for years. Was that a big influence watching, being around, and say, this is something I want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for me, racing pretty much was my life. You know, I took my first steps at an IndyCar race at Fontana, or I guess Auto Club Speedway, back a long time ago, and I got bitten by the bug then. So, you know, it started early. I was fortunate enough to grow up at the IndyCar racetrack, you know, with my dad, my family, my mom and my sister. You know, we all go to a lot of the closer races in the summer on our motorhome. So I got to grow up, you know, in the IndyCar paddock, and it really was a part of my life. And then fortunately, as I got older, I was able to start racing myself, and here I am today trying to be a professional race car driver.
Now, your dad builds things. He's involved in the engines and, you know, the technical part of it, and that doesn't interest you. You want to drive, let him check your car before and after you come in?
Yeah, I mean, he started out as a driver too, and I think that was his primary dream. But unfortunately, like a lot of other race car drivers, didn't quite work out. But you know, yeah, now he's big with the director of engineering and safety, so he does a lot now with the safety improvement of the cars, with the seat foams, you know, safer wall, you know, stuff like that, the pit road attenuator. So I mean, it interests me a lot, you know, especially being a driver. But you know, I definitely like to be a driver first.
Yeah, but see, the neat thing is, he has you in the car, so he's going to do everything he can to make it as safe as possible. You started out in go-karts, was very successful in go-karts. How many years did you run them?
I started racing go-karts at 13 at Newcastle Motorsports Park, Mark Dismore's place, just like Joseph Newgarden, and I started out in the Yamaha Junior Can and then progressed from there up into the tag ranks, ran nationally amongst USPKS and WKA, so I think in total I did about 4 years of go-karting before I went to Formula Fords.
What's your goal?
Win the Indianapolis 500.
Oh. Has it ever crossed your mind, gee, I'd like to go down and race at Daytona?
If they'll pay me to drive a race car, I'll drive it.
I see. You have run or are going to run the 2000s?
Yeah, so this year I had a USF 2000 ride. We ended up only doing 4 races. It was planned to be a full season, but unfortunately I learned what it meant to be a young, aspiring race car driver and have things not go your way. So, you know, it was still a really good experience, even though we only did a half season. So right now we're looking forward to a program next year.
Have you got something in the works? And if you are you going to run USF 2000?
Yeah, that's the plan right now. There's nothing really written down on paper yet, or no handshakes being done or anything, but there's a couple people who we're talking to. So first, you know, we just have to get sort of the money lined up, and then we can go through with actually implementing a program and then going forward for next year.
You know, strange thing, every driver that's ever been up here, one of the first things they say is money. Money's always involved in this sport, and it's changed dramatically, although some of it's turning around the other way. When I first came around in the early 60s, drivers didn't have to go find money. There was money there. They just got hired to drive the car. Now you have to go out and find your own money, and then the teams fight to get you, depending on how much you got. Has Dad thought anything about getting a second job to help you along a little bit?
Yeah, his famous line is, after I left go-karts, he told me he'd finance a Formula Ford, and after that I was on my own. So he's still looking for me to make it one day because he thinks he's going to get 50% of whatever I make. And honestly, that's fine with me. He can take it all if I'm driving race cars. But yeah, I think his second job is being my manager right now, but other than that.
Now listen, I found out today that you have a crackerjack PR guy.
Arnie?
Yes.
Yes.
Arnie Saribin, everybody's pal. I found out that because I contacted Pat Corelli last night. I said, help. And she got a hold of me today and said, guess what? You're available and you can thank Arnie. Oh, how did Arnie get involved? He's their unofficial PR guy. Oh, well, that works out. What does your mom think about you strapping into a race car and going fast and faster?
I mean, she's good with it. Thankfully, I've had both parents and my sister and all my grandparents, everyone. They've all supported me a lot through it. I mean, I know it's definitely tough for her watching, for anyone to watch their kid get in a race car, but she does a really good job of it, and she comes to every race weekend she can, and she's always there with anything she can help me with. So I'm definitely appreciative of that.
Does she polish your helmet for you so you look good? Comb your hair? Well, you don't have to have that.
No,
okay.
I have to polish my own helmet.
There was a mother of a driver said she's more concerned about her son driving because you can always go get another husband, but you can't get another son. And I thought, boy, is that hit the button on the head? Wow. That you're not thinking that, are you? No. Do you support him? You love seeing him strap in and go?
I know it's his passion, so I absolutely do.
Are you excited to see him at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Yeah, it'll be fun when he's going. By that time, he'll be going 245, and you'll love that one. You are studying at Marian University, and it's kind of funny to say that because when I got here, it was Marian College, and they had a new president come in, and boy, he has really turned that place around. What's it like going to school right here when you go home at night and your dad says, well, let's get the homework, come on. Or doesn't he have to remind you?
Well, see, that was a debate in our house because I live at Marion in the dorms.
Oh,
but, yeah, he wasn't for that because of the economic reason. However, my mom and I were able to win out, fortunately. So I don't have someone over my shoulder every night telling me to do my homework. But I still do get my homework done. So it's been a fun experience because, a lot of race car drivers don't have the opportunity to have a quote-unquote normal childhood. But, at times it's extremely stressful because it's hard enough to be a college student. It's hard enough to be a race car driver. It's hard enough to be a student athlete. And then when you put all of them together, sometimes you can't do it all. But, all in all, it's been a really good experience and it's something, I'm really happy to have been a part of.
You're going to be one of the few that comes to a racetrack. He's going to have a helmet in one bag and a briefcase in the other hand, bringing your paperwork with you. When I first started, you say to a driver, "Did you go to college?" Huh? Now you got college graduates driving race cars. It's got to make you wonder what's with that. Is there a track that you've run on that you like better than any other?
I'd say obviously Indianapolis is your favorite because for me, like I lived at the Speedway for 5 months when my dad first came to IndyCar. We actually lived in our motorhome in sort of the driver lot for 5 months. So my first day to kindergarten, my picture, you can see the pagoda in the background. So it's the Speedway is forever ingrained in me. But outside of the Speedway, I'd say probably St. Petersburg. I've always sort of loved street courses, like even growing up with the go-karts. I always loved the street courses, and I think it's neat because it's the first race of the year. You're right on the water, the atmosphere, the fans are always there. So for me, I'd say St. Pete's my favorite track outside of the Speedway.
Are you going to be on the starting grid down there next year?
That's the plan.
Okay. And Dad says, I'll be there too. Of course he will be. He works there.
Yeah.
When you were growing up and hanging around the paddock getting in the way, other kids did you hang out with, other drivers' kids?
I grew up with the Herdas, so Colton and Callie, with also Flynn Lazier. There were two other kids. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but there were a couple of us. Luca Andretti as well. Clinton Cole Fink. So there was a whole half dozen of us Rat Pack that just run around the racetrack with our little mini Indy cars, trying to find a slide to race them down, or racing our bikes, or just staying busy.
A couple of names you mentioned. Flynn did pretty well at the SCCA runoffs here. I think he was running up near the front, and something happened, if I'm not mistaken. And what's that kid, Colton Herta? He's not doing too bad either. Doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, that's for sure. They've definitely. It's kind of cool because looking back on pictures of us when we were little kids, and now we're almost racing against each other in the same paddock, and it's kind of like, wow, our dreams, right in front of our eyes now.
How long do you think it would take you to get to the Indy Lights?
Hopefully sooner than later, within the next 2 or 3 years.
Do you plan on trying to advance the USF 2000, go to Pro Mazda, go to Indy Lights?
Yeah, that whatever the most natural progression is, if you needed to skip a step or something, or if that was what happened or whatnot, or if you knew you needed to go up each step, then whatever it takes to get to IndyCar and be ready to be in IndyCar.
Does it concern you that there's some really good kids that have come out or are coming out of the Mazda Road to Indy program and there's no seats available? I mean, they're ready to go. There's no seats.
Yeah, obviously that's sort of, money is always a big thing in auto racing, but it's also the right place at the right time. I mean, sometimes it's unfortunate circumstances, but other times it is, fortunate circumstances. If you have a seat available and it's there and you can take it, then, good for you. But yeah, we've seen with a lot of recent graduates of the Road to Indy, even Indy Lights champions or runner-up, if there's not a seat available, that's just the way it goes nowadays. So hopefully, there are some new teams being talked about coming out, so hopefully the seats do go up.
Well, by the time you get there, some of these guys will have packed it in. They'll be drawing Social Security or something, so they'll give it up. But it's a shame that there isn't a program in place that would provide funding. Like Kyle Kaiser, as far as I know, he's still looking. I don't know that he's put a program together yet with Uncos Racing, although that would be logical since they want to move and go up. But, without the Mazda Road to Indy makes it possible if you're a champion to move up and covers your costs for the next step you take. So that's pretty good. And at least he gets 3 races, if nothing else. But I guess he's working on pretty close to a full season program, which would be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we saw with Spencer Piggott, where he originally only had the 3-year deal or 3-race deal with Ray Hall, and then he ended up going to Ed Carpenter, and, he built that relationship through a couple of years, even driving the half seasons, and now he's, this next year going to be in a full-time or be in the car full-time. So, sometimes you just have to bide your time nowadays, but, it's okay if you don't make it until you're 25 years old, because you still have a long career ahead of you.
That's what J.R. Hildebrand thought, too. Now he's going to be riding his bike around the mountains, I guess. I haven't heard that he has anything else going on, but I wouldn't be surprised that he would. You're studying business at Marion, business management. What do you plan to do with that other than engineer your own career?
Yeah, so that's the main thing is when I talk to potential business partners or things like that, I can give them a reason why they should sponsor me, especially in the junior formula. It's hard with, the ROI because, we don't have the Indianapolis 500 with millions of people watching and, 500,000 people in the seats. So I have to get creative in ways of things I can do for them. And then also, potentially, with the management and, possibly a marketing minor, eventually one day I think it would be cool to own my own team or have some sort of thing like that, sort of like what Brian Herta did, where you're still able to be a part of the sport, maybe not so much as just someone who hangs around, but actually have, a purpose, or later on help younger drivers move their way up.
You're worried about moving younger drivers up. You're still young and heading that way yourself. Jeez, slow down a little bit. You don't have to start worrying about younger drivers. Get you. The thing that impresses me, I think, now, Colton is tied up with George Michael Steinbrenner, which is not a bad owner to have on your team, with a solid team that understands and has won 3 of the last 4 or 500, so they know what they're doing. And to me, that seems to be would be the secret to get with a team that that wants to. And I'm surprised more IndyCar teams don't have Indy Lights programs. I know when it first started, a lot of them talk about it, but they didn't do anything. And I think it would be a good idea to kind of encourage these guys. We'll give you some this if you do this. And I also think, have you read Ken Unger's book? It tells you how to brand yourself, what you need to do to put yourself together, and how to get. In fact, have you seen Derek Daly's latest? Did you see that video he's got? That's pretty good. Yeah. But it starts from when you were 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it tells you how to brand and how important it is that when people hear a certain name or a nickname, they know exactly who they're talking about. Are you working on that program at your business management course?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately, Michael Crawford is a teacher at Marion who used to own an Indy Lights team. So, and then there's multiple other people at Marion that have, the business background that I can lean on for, the advice that I might not necessarily have growing up. With my dad being an engineer and not being so much on the business side, I can look to them for that business advice because I can bring that racing experience. So when we put them together, we can, have it going forward.
I mean, the president hasn't caught up with Michael yet? Huh, he's still there.
Yeah.
Hey, he's a good guy. In fact, I remember, I think it was Milwaukee. He had a lights team, and his driver, for some reason, couldn't drive, so he strapped in and he drove it. I don't know that he went many laps, but he got in the car and did drive the car. He's got a lot of experience and worked with Sam Schmidt when Sam was first starting, so he got the business experience there and foolishly started owning his own team. What does he teach?
Right now, he's got some marketing courses, and a lot of the business teachers at Marion teach a bunch of different things with finance, marketing, management, things like that. So they're not just tied to one thing. Usually, they have their specific thing they teach, but they'll teach an array of classes.
Marion now has a medical. Have you thought about being a doctor?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought about it, and I enrolled in school, and the only course I passed was prescription writing. If you look at my writing, you say, you probably did. What excites you the most about driving a race car?
I don't know. It's probably the feeling you get behind the wheel of a race car. I guess it's sort of a cliche thing, but I don't know. I mean that what it is or should be what it is for a lot of people, because the feeling you get behind a race car. There's not many things in life where you're truly pushing the limit of yourself and a machine. In a lot of stick and ball sports, it's not so much the life and death thing, but you're tiptoeing the edge of the line at 230 miles an hour. It's not like you're just throwing a football down the field. So I think for me that's sort of what excites me is that that thrill you don't get doing other things.
Do you get to work on the cars you drive now?
A little bit, yes.
The reason I say that is back in my day, a lot of the drivers, not all of them, because I remember seeing several just leaning on the pit wall waiting for them to bring the car back. But a lot of drivers worked on the cars because they worked on them coming up, so they understood what it took to make it work. And, there's nothing more exciting for you is to know your crew will give you a car that will go, and they work on it hard because they know if they give it to you, you can win with it.
Yeah, that was kind of the funny thing. We were at Homestead at the beginning of the year for spring training, and with the USF teams, the staff is light. And afterwards, after the test, we had a day there before we went down to the firm for another test. And so we just had one crew chief at the time because the engineer and the other person hadn't flown in yet. And so I was there wrenching on the car. And
oh boy.
Yeah, the crew chief was joking that at one point I held basically every position but the truck driver. So.
Well, get a CDL.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And you can go. I'll drive the car. You guys fly down. I'll drive 3 days. Don't worry. You'll be there in 4 hours. What's the most fun kart you drove and track?
Probably for me, it was Robopong. I think that was sort of the most fun because it was a big test, of the man and machine because, a couple of years we had engines that blew up or the other years we had engines that didn't blow up and everyone else was blowing up and we just put our heads down and kept driving. And, it really beats you up doing, 50 laps at a time and then waiting and then hopping back in and doing it again. And it was also cool racing against guys like Joseph Newgard and Scott Dixon, Simona Di Silvestro, having the pros amongst you and just having one big race. I think that was really cool for me.
That's quite a track. That event has grown quite immensely, and I hope that the Pro-Am comes back next year with the Weldon Memorial. I hope it'll come back. I know Susie was not able to make it because she started a boutique down in St. Pete and was busy with that, so she couldn't come. I hope she comes up here this year get it back again. And their oldest son, Sebastian, is doing pretty well in the kart, so you watch out.
Yeah, it was kind of fun because a couple years ago he was too small for his go-kart seat, so my dad poured a seat for him, so it's basically like an IndyCar seat but in his little go-kart seat, so he would have enough support around him. So yeah, he's doing really well. And a couple of years ago, he was racing WKA, so right at the very tail end of my career he sort of stepped in, so it's fun to see.
Yeah, well, How much time do you spend studying?
As little as necessary, I guess. Yeah, luckily the classes aren't too bad. I have a couple of business classes, French class, and a sociology class, so they're not too bad.
So what do you do the other 7 hours of the day?
Well, I'm also a member of Marion University cycling team, so
Oh, really?
I spend a lot of time riding my bike.
They got a great course there.
Yeah, we've got the velodrome there.
Yeah. Have they for a number of years they were the number one in the world?
Yeah,
Their
we
team.
still are. I think now we're up to 38 national championships.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, they've had some phenomenal teams.
Yeah, it's really neat because one of our girls, Corinne Rivera, who graduated 3 years ago, she at one point this year was rated the number one female cyclist in the world because she won a couple of the really prestigious pro European races and stuff like that. So it was really neat to have a true Marion grad be the best woman in the world.
How do you rate?
Not too bad for a race car driver.
Since you ride bike, you've got to do a lot of physical exercise to get in condition. So by the time you get off the bike and into the car, you're physically ready to go.
Yeah, it definitely helps, cardiovascularly because it's really no problem getting in the car. So then I also supplement the weight training as well because we've got a couple of gym facilities at Marion, so I can keep up with upper body and shoulders and neck and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely a fit race car driver.
So in case your race car career doesn't go anywhere, you can be a bike rider.
Maybe.
Run that big one in Europe. It just interests me that the young kids coming along and getting hooked on the sport and moving up and the struggles it takes to get there. But majority of them don't give up. They keep working like Zach Veach. He very quietly worked and worked and worked, and he told me in June that he had a program put together, but he wouldn't tell me what it was or with who. And I don't blame him because I wouldn't have told anybody anyway. But there's a lot involved. You see the kid like that come in and you say, look, he's got a car yet. He spent a lot of hours putting the program together. So you've got a lot of time to get going, and their business management degree will help you accomplish it.
Yeah, I think that's why auto racing is probably arguably one of the toughest or the toughest sports in the world. Not just based off the pure fact that you're driving race cars, but all the effort and time you have to put into it because it's not a yellow brick road for 99% of the people. And I think that's also why it's such a sweet thing when you do have things go well or you're able to win something like the Indianapolis 500 and you look back at all the times and the struggle, and it's you smile because it's it's cool. It all, paid off. And I think, all good things you must work hard for.
Well, I've asked Eddie Cheever and Bobby Ray Hall and a couple other guys, does it bother you when you get introduced not as president of a company, an Indianapolis 500 winner? They said, no, love it. You'll be known that for the rest of your life. It's quite impressive. Well, I appreciate you coming on relatively short notice. Where's your dad? Is he down at the test?
I don't know where he is. I thought he was coming. He was the one who told me to be here at 7:30. So I had to ride today and eat dinner. So I didn't check his location yet. But
I see. Well, I talked to him, and I'm the one that said, can you come at this time? He said, sure, no problem. It's easy for him to say he wasn't bringing. Your mother was.
yeah.
It didn't matter to him when you got here. Well, I wish you well. I'm sure we all will keep track of this young man. He is going to go somewhere. And I'm sure with the help of your dad and the background and knowledge he has, he'll help you get in, and the people at Marion and with the marketing and so forth, you'll make it happen. And your mom says, I certainly hope so.
Yeah, she wants someone else to spend their money.
Really? There's somebody else in the house that wants to spend their money besides you?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm an expensive child. Sorry,
guess
Mom.
So. I guess so. Well, it's great to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time. We wish you nothing but the best, and don't be surprised if your phone rings again. We'll get you in here after the season starts, see what you've accomplished, where you're going. Would you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Keep an eye on him. Chandler Horton. You're going to hear from him again.
Thank you, guys.
Now, next week's program is going to be pretty much like this week's. I'm not sure. I've got some people I've talked to. I got to see if their time is cleared. So it's gotten these days where I've got to talk to 7 people to get 2, because they got meetings or they got sponsor commitments and so forth. But I've got coming up in the next couple weeks, I got some people you're really going to want to see. So keep an eye on autosportradio.com. Go to the Autosport Show tab, click on there. If you're not on my email address, send me an email and I'll put on my email list. I'll send you an email who the guests are. I want to thank everybody for watching, everybody for listening. I want to thank Mom for bringing him in. Until next week, Don K. saying good night. See you then. Oh, is there anybody in house who didn't go to the first Red Bull air race that said, boy, it sounds interesting, I might like to go? Nobody? Oh, okay. What the hell with